So when Peter asked me to consider doing this, it took me about 5 seconds to say yes. And he said, his idea was to have a fireside chat. And the reason he was motivated to call it that is he remembered a time that Andre and I and Peter were up camping, and we got into a pretty in-depth discussion around the embers of the fire about all the challenges in building a company and managing its growth and all the things that you run up against. And we had a very good discussion. Remember that? Yeah. And boy, was it windy and cold too, but it was a great trip. And so Peter said we want to do a fireside chat. And so my comment was, well, how the hell do you have a fireside chat without a fire, right? So now I hope all of you feel fulfilled. I know I should have brought a fire extinguisher. I've actually done that before, but there's our fire. Well, pretty lame one, but use your imagination a little bit. So before we dive in deep with Andre's story, two guys walk into a bar. No, it's not a joke. The two guys were Andre and I. And this was back in 97 or 98 in Anaheim, California, in a hotel bar. And we sat down and talked about the potential of my company acquiring his company. And we ended up saying that would be a good thing. And we did that. And Andre and his company moved out to Colorado. So the reason I make that historical footnote is I like to take a tiny, tiny little, at the submolecular level, credit for bringing this brilliant business builder into Colorado. And I hope he still loves the fact that he's in Colorado. I know he does. Any comment on that?
Well, so Steve called me before our deal was consummated, and I was living in Santa Barbara and had a small company with 35 people there. And it was a Thursday afternoon, and so the deal was kind of in motion. It was my first company that I'd sold, so I'd never been through it before. And it was, and you said, so when are you moving to Colorado? We had never talked about this, and the deal wasn't done. And so I'm like, I don't know, how about Monday? And so I packed 2 boxes in my car and put my mountain bike on, which was my total belongings. And I drove out and I was talking to his assistant because I only knew Steve and Kim, his EA. And I said, hey, I'm coming out I guess I'm moving to Colorado, to Denver, but I'm from Santa Barbara, and Denver's a big town. I don't know where I'm going, and I've never rented before, so maybe you can show me around. She says, yeah, that's fine. If you come in Sunday, just stop by my house. I'm kind of off of Arapahoe if you come up 25, and I'll show you around. So I did that, and she drove me around town for a couple hours. I dropped her off. I got completely lost, and I ended up at the Royal Hotel at Colfax and in Colorado. That was my first night in Colorado, which we laugh about now because it's kind of down the street from where we're at and it's all boarded up. You guys have seen that now. Anyway, 3 days ago, we celebrated our 20 years of meeting. So it was March 18th, 98 that I met her. We got married 2 years to the day after that. So we got married on March 18th in 2000. 20 years later, here I am. So talk about serendipity. You definitely brought me to Colorado. Kim kept me in Colorado.
And I didn't even feel bad that he married my assistant, right? And he's got a house full of wonderful ladies, 2 brilliant, beautiful daughters. And we'll talk more about that, the incredible energy of the 3 of them and his personal household. So what is it, over 15 years with Ping?
Yeah, so started in January 1, 2002.
Cool.
Yeah.
What a story, what a legacy, what growth. And I think it's just such a beautiful use case for building a business because he's been through it all. He's seen it from every aspect and bumped up, I think, against most all the problems, challenges, and opportunities that you can have in building a business. So one of the things that is hard to manage is that as companies grow larger, it's easy when it's fairly small. And where we worked together first was Online System Services, then Web Interactive. And it was very cool because I got used to touching every employee. You can't say that anymore. Talking with every employee every day. I'd run around the building, and we had four floors in downtown Denver, and and really just, say, what's going on? Show me something cool. What's going on? And then when you get to the point of, climbing through 200 and 250 employees, that's just not scalable. You can't do it. So the question for you, Andre, is there's so much critical ingredients in the recipe of success that are around the culture. How do you maintain that culture as you grow?
So the way we've done it is I kind of celebrate all the little random quirks that happen in the company. And so if you're at Ping long enough, if you look around our physical space, everything has a story. The conference room, as you walk in, all the lighting in the conference room was taken from a scene of Social Network, where the founders getting fired, and there's just a ceiling full of lights. And I was like, that's really cool, we should do that. And then you go into the kitchen and there's a neon sign that says Eats. And that comes from, as a surfer in California, every time I'd go down to Malibu, there was some old restaurant on the beach and it had a big neon sign that just said food. And when you're a kid surfing and you see a sign that says food, you're stopping. Like, it doesn't matter. And so the kitchen says Eats. On the carpet, we've got kind of this black-green carpet. It looks kind of random, and it is kind of random, but I remember the day I was putting down the green carpet, and there was a guy that works for me named David Waite. He's worked for me for 17 years. We call him the Oracle, because he knows everything. You just ask him a question, and he's the Wikipedia of computing. And so he used to sit in the corner, and as I was laying down the carpet, he was actually there on a Saturday. He was the only one there. And so I kind of laid down the yellow brick road. So if you want to go see the Oracle, I would say just follow the yellow brick road. And most people don't know that story. They just see the carpet. I say, go do that, and you'll see it's a hop, skip, and a jump to end up at the Oracle. One time in a meeting, I said, we need a stretch goal. We need a BHAG. And one of my managers said, what's a BHAG? I said, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And he thought I said big, hairy, audacious goat. So we have this picture of a goat around, and like, people come in, they don't know what it is. I hired a new VP of sales, and he walks in the first day and there's a picture of a goat over his door, which basically means don't screw it up. You better hit the stretch goal so we get our bonus. And so there's all these things that happen. Lately, I've got like a grizzly bear, because the concept is you release bears in your life, and then you got to outrun the bear, is the way I would describe it, right? Things that kind of scare you. And so the bear has taken on a whole new life of its own. There's all these emails. But I'd say the last thing that's probably been the most impactful for me, I don't use Twitter that much, but we have a channel and email called Ping Junkies, and it basically is the social channel, for lack of a better term. So we have an official staff list, but then we have an informal Ping Junkies list. And I actually communicate on that a lot. I share a lot of either insights or things I'm thinking about on that channel. And it's very informal, and it's not vetted by anyone per se. And we're distributed. We're about 700 people in 8 offices in many, many countries. And it's just an opportunity for me to almost have, it's one way, I gather that, but people can read my mind through those emails. And I think that's made it small. It's made it personal.
So on that theme, you hear so many companies talk about our number one priority is our employees, right? They're the top. That's what we care the most about, is the employees. You hear that a lot, and a lot of it is just talk. You are doing it. Give us some insight on how you elevate that employee and how you help them to feel that they are the top priority of the company.
I would say there's a lot of little things you do, I think, in putting people first. I think when people leave a company, whether under good circumstances or more difficult ones, it says a lot about both the company and the individual in terms of how they part ways, more so than when you hire people. So I think treating people right on the way out is a big part of the equation. I think there's also moments in time where, as the CEO, you have investors, you have your management team, you have the CEO, and then you have all of your employees. And if your company and those employees has stock options, there's really nobody speaking for the employees at the critical moments. And so I remember a moment in time where about a year and a half ago, our company was being acquired by Vista Equity, and you're in the throes of negotiation. And on one hand, you have all your investors, prior investors, and we'd raised about 110 million over the course of, 12 years or so. And so they're hyper-focused, and I mean like on every single penny. It's like, is the share price gonna be $2.21, or is the share price gonna be $2.22? Like literally every penny. And on the other end, you have, a new investor acquirer who's also got all of their own interests. And then you've got the bankers in the middle and the advisors, and all of them are on a phone call at the same time. And the only voice in that call that is representing kind of the common folks, if you will, the employees and the common shareholders, is you in that moment. And so maybe one of my proudest moments to represent the employees was we had an opportunity to accelerate options at the acquisition. And it was sizable. It was to the tune of about $50 million worth of acceleration. And negotiating an ability to get my existing investors to agree to accelerate 50, because that 50 million was coming out of their pockets and it was coming out of my pocket and kind of other founding shareholders. Those are the moments where you're really put to the test in terms of who are you representing.
I get that. Had a similar moment with Webb when we went public.
Yes.
Had to get those accelerations done to take care of everybody.
Yes.
So you're proving it, making them number one. So much of Ping, in my perception, is built around your values, built around your vision. And you have some terrific techniques for making vision contagious. And some of it you've touched on, like, the carpet and the goats and so forth, but you do a masterful job of developing corporate traditions. And traditions just like in a family. What do you do at Thanksgiving, or what do you do during Dad's birthday, or whatever it may be? Those traditions are so important. And I see you do things like, your Halloween party is just so over the top. This guy does costumes for Halloween that puts Hollywood to shame. I mean, it's crazy, and everybody loves it. Things that are kind of internal marketing. Yeah. Remember the 300 video?
Right.
The everybody just loved that and gets behind it, and you get internal buzz. You get that upward spiral with people because they connect with the vision and they pour their passion into it. Tell us some more tricks. How do you manage that? How do you keep that upward spiral going?
So, like the goat, like the Halloween, there are future traditions embedded in your company everywhere. You just have to see the seed. And like I said, many times they're quirky. The Halloween costume thing, which has become kind of infamous, even kind of around town, is it was all by accident. We had a kids' day at work. We were a small company. There were like 10 kids. We hired a face painter. It happened to be close to Halloween. The face painter painted all the kids. We had the face painter for 2 hours. We only had 10 kids. Finished in an hour and said, well, who else? And I said, well, we'll do it. And so she did the Joker on me. A picture was taken and it was sent out to the company. Well, everyone thought we held an official Halloween party and everyone was dressing up. I will admit the face paint was pretty good, so it looked official. Well, then someone said to me the week later, they said, so what are you going to be next year? And it was game on. You know what I mean? So it was completely random. And every year it kind of escalated. The culture, I do have an attitude on, I do have a saying with culture. Culture is not a spectator sport. So there's no such thing as come and be entertained. Because then you have givers and takers. And that's not fair and it's not fun. So the concept behind costumes and Ping events and parties is that if we're going to spend time and effort to put on an event, lo and behold, you're going to do some work too. And your work is come and entertain and be entertained. So it forces people to put some effort into it. And they complain about it at times and then they have a ton of fun. So that's, an example of it. One other one that has become infamous at Ping is what we call budget reviews. And a budget review started because at the beginning of Ping, first couple of months, We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have a product. It was basically just a group of people sitting in a room. So we figured we can sit in the room. We can sit at the bar across the street and do as much work as we're doing now. Well, it turns out there were 2 waitresses. I had a bunch of young single guys, and there were 2 waitresses there that they liked, and they worked Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Every Wednesday at 2 o'clock they were on, and every Wednesday at 2 o'clock we were across the street. Well, one day we're sitting around the table, and one of my folks got a call from his spouse, and I hear him go like this. He's like, sorry, honey, I can't talk right now. We're in a budget review. Well, guess what? Drinking, the code word for now we're going to go out drinking became budget review. So to this day now, I will send out an email, and it happens at random times. And the world is just getting a little bit thick. You can sense a lot of tension in the company, and you just need to blow off some steam. And I'll send an email that says, hey, we're going to review the budget, is typically what I say. And all the newbies in the company freak out that they got an email from me, and they go, oh my God, I don't have a budget. Do I have a budget? Do I know what my budget is? Because Andre wants to come review the budget with me. And it basically is just code speak for we're going to go drinking. And so like I said, all these little things, every one of these little cultural quirks, they all had something that happened like that person saying that. And then we just kind of hit the repeat button, and it grew up into this massive, over 10 years, 15 years, it becomes kind of infamous.
I've talked to any number of Ping employees. I remember one clearly, very nice lady. And we were talking, I said, I've known Andre for a while. And she just went off on, Andre does Tough Mudders, if you know the competition. He runs marathons, he rides motorcycles. Just the attitude that employees have and the respect that they have for you is a lot around your energy. And as you're getting bigger, it's harder and harder to replicate that energy across a broader sphere. Some of the things you've touched on here, I think, have to do with fun.
Yeah.
People need to have fun at work. You need to have gratification. You need to have all the fundamentals, right? But if you can have fun doing it, people are gonna want that job for the rest of their lives. So I think you've kind of answered this, but specifically fun, humor, emphasizing that. What else can you tell us?
I can tell you it gets harder as work gets harder and you get a little bit older. There's only so much energy to go around. But no, you're absolutely right. I came to the realization some years back. I think I was looking at a photo of mine. Actually, this is a good example, right? This photo was taken, probably 4 or 5 years ago. You go, look, he looks a lot heavier, and he's not as tan, his smile doesn't look as happy. And I'm like, okay. So at the time when I did this photo, I like this photo. It was a good photo. But I remember looking at it going, God, I look my age right now. Like, I liked my photo 5 years ago. And so what I've realized is that no matter, like at any moment in time, the photo that I'm taking, I probably don't like it, but I'm probably gonna like it in 5 years. And so once you realize it, like it's another way to say you don't get the moments back. Your life is ticking by. And you might not like it in this moment, but you're gonna look back and you're gonna say, I hope I sucked the marrow out of it, to use one of your phrases. And so that whole concept that says we're not getting the moments back, and if we're just too busy to have fun, we're gonna look back and regret it. And so that kind of became part of my DNA. And so you're just always looking for the opportunities to say, how much fun can we afford? At any moment in time, we can afford more fun, let's go do it. And I've never had a situation where I've looked back and said, I regretted doing that. I regretted taking the time to go have some fun with people. I've never done that. I've always looked back and said, we didn't miss anything. We didn't leave anything on the table. And that's been cool.
And one of the best times to inject fun is during the darkest times, right?
Yeah,
remember the Denver Broncos Cleveland game where I forget the lineman, we're whatever in the fourth quarter, and we're on the goal line basically and have the whole field to go. And that lineman said, we got them just where we want them. It broke the tension. It revived the spirit. So when you're going, man, I don't know if we're going to make payroll next week, if you can find the heart to have humor in those times, it bootstraps people. So fun is important. Passion is important. this was kind of Peter, you and I talking of the fundamentals of hiring.
Yes.
And the challenges of hiring. And as a company grows, maybe realizing you didn't hire some of the right people and you need to make some replacements.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the challenges of doing that.
Well, so, so we're part of the Vista group of families, and Vista has a formula that they use in hiring that you don't really have an option to adopt or not adopt. It is the Vista Formula. I've really, really come to appreciate it. It does focus upon getting individuals early in their career, say right out of college, so you don't have a lot of track record on those individuals. And it looks essentially at a combination of attitude and, well, I'll just say kind of raw intellect, if that makes sense. So you take a good attitude and good raw intellect and you can shape them into anything over time. That formula works. I will say absolutely that formula works. That notwithstanding, I think every company overweights skills, just flat out. Everyone's looking to take someone and with no training, plop them into a job and see that they're successful. And the indicator that they're using is what experience does the user have, because they don't want to train. And they're missing in that equation of, let me just look at the experience, they're missing all the more important characteristics or raw attributes of the human themselves. So I heard an acronym probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it stuck with me, and it's withstood the test of time. It's called BATCH, B-A-T-C-H. Bright, aligned, team-oriented, coachable, and hungry. Every one of those attributes is incredibly important. Aligned to your values.
Love it.
Team-oriented, it's about the team, it's not about the individual. Coachable, I can't say enough about coachable. If a person is bright but uncoachable, they are going to be stuck, guaranteed. There's nothing you can do about it. And if your company succeeds, you'll outgrow them. And then hungry is, man, that's the X factor. You can't put fire in someone. And between intellect and hunger, if I had to choose, I would choose hunger. Ideally, you'd get both, because then you really got the raw attributes. But I would choose hunger because it can overcome a lot of flaws. If a person is hungry enough, at some point they'll be forced to self-reflect if they're being held back. And in that self-reflection, they become coachable. And as they become coachable, they become malleable, and then you can move them beyond whatever their sticking point is. So I think batch is a really big part of the equation.
You know, I talked earlier about kind of internal marketing. You've been the king of swag. I have a collection of Ping swag, and it's from an umbrella. My wife walks the dog in the park, and she's got on a Ping storm jacket that she wears, and she's had people stop her and say, "Hey, do you work at Ping?" I mean, look at that kind of marketing. Any comments on the value of swag and internal and external marketing?
Yeah, another happy accident. It's my life is very Forrest Gump, right? At the end of the day. So all these little things like the goat or the bear or the budget reviews or little sayings, they can be memorialized. My latest one, so we have 1,000 t-shirts over 15 years. I'm not joking. My wife has gotten rid of boxes and boxes of t-shirts. But everything can be memorialized on a t-shirt. My latest one is, all of my officers have one word that they misuse. And I've got a whole slew of t-shirts with that word slapped across them. And they're all gonna get on stage at a future kickoff, and I'm gonna celebrate giving them that t-shirt. And one of them is like strategical. Like, that's not a word. You're not strategical. Anyway, so yeah, I would say we have a lot of fun with those t-shirts. I like the concept that people wear your jersey. So it's a metaphor. A lot of times you'll be around people, and I learned this because I wasn't a football fan. And I always used to watch Super Bowls with a certain kind of independence. Like, I'm just there for entertainment. Whoever wins, wins. And I realized something when I moved to Denver and became a Broncos fan. The good and bad of being a fan is that you have to be open to the pain of loss when you become a fan. When you wear someone's jersey and you vote for them and you lose, there's pain associated with that. And I remember that football game where right out of the gate, we just got clobbered by the Patriots. And that for the first time, that one hurt. And I thought, it hurt because I'm now wearing the Broncos jersey, whereas I wasn't before. And lo and behold, when you talk about loyalty, I want people wearing my jersey. We talk about this a lot right now with our partners. A lot of partners in the security industry, they'll wear your jersey when they walk into your office, but they're in their bag is every other competitor vendor's jersey. Hold on, which company are we at? Let me pull out Ping's jersey. Okay, let's go in. Bankers do the same thing. And so you start thinking about, what does it mean to be loyal? What does it mean for people to wear your jersey? And that's an emotional statement more than anything else. The physical manifestation is just all these stupid things we do with t-shirts.
Terrific.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most important aspects, in my view, of maintaining culture is recognizing achievement. And I love your bell, but you've got a multitude of ways to recognize achievement. Paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so we've got the proverbial gong, right? And it literally is a gong. And when we do big deals, when we hit our quarter, when we hit our year, I'll say, hey, let's go meet at the gong at 3:00. And then, I'll hand the gavel to somebody and they'll do the gong. We'll say a few words. The deals have gotten bigger and the expectations have gotten bigger, so my gong has gotten bigger. I now have like a 5-foot gong. It is like the real deal. Like, it shakes the building when you hit that thing. That's fun. So that's a group one where you have to celebrate the wins together. We also do what's called the Extraordinary Awards. And extraordinary to me is like when you leave nothing on the table. When somebody hits it on every single dimension, meaning the performance is incredible and their attitude is also incredible. So they didn't sacrifice anything to get the win. They didn't sacrifice their colleagues. They didn't sacrifice, the way in which they interacted with people. It's like, it's the whole win. We call that extraordinary. And we have a series of those that kind of celebrate attributes of extraordinary. And for that, we will celebrate people at company events. We have medallions that represent, the characteristic of extraordinary. People kind of display them on their desks, and people that have received multiple of them have multiple medallions. And so it does kind of become a badge of honor. But it's cool. I mean, look, this market is so competitive, as you know. I mean, you're going to pay competitive rates to have great people. And the whole person, it's not about that. And so you do have to take the time to recognize great performance. And that's just one of many.
One of many. You're a master at it.
Yeah.
Moving into the more serious world of investment. That's what this group is about, right? You've been through it all. I mean, you kind of started friends and family and angel, and you got into VCs, some of the biggest names. And you raised a lot of investment to build this company. And I remember over the years, some very large companies kind of courting you for a potential acquisition, and the puzzle pieces that you had to work through of, are we too early? Is the valuation right? Should we do an exit? What if we did an IPO? We kind of, worked together on an IPO in the past. What if we did an IPO? What's the practicality of that? And so if you look at that time frame, and moving from angel to VC to PE acquisition, can you give us kind of how you felt about that evolution and what the key pivot points, or what the key, when you hit the reset button, or whatever it was that might have changed your thinking in that progression?
Well, you learn so much, and you're right. I mean, I don't think there's a form of investment I didn't do. I mean, to go so far as I had one person say, he owned a bar, I want to invest $25,000 and it's got to be cash, and I'm going to send my niece to deliver the cash. Okay, we'll take it. Cash we'll spend. I'll figure out a way to deposit it. I think kind of like what I learned through that phase, first of all, it's not as if, Ping has been a good story, but it's not as if I had multiple term sheets at every round and it was hyper competitive and we weren't a unicorn. The truth is, I really struggled every single time we raised money. I just really struggled. And like, to get one term sheet, was awesome, you know? And there were many times where we were on the ropes, and had we not gotten the term sheet, you know, who knows what would have happened. A couple things kind of stand out to me in this process. One is that you never know where the money's going to come from. And so I'll give you one example of this. We were doing a formal raise. I actually had one of the later stage raises. We actually had an investment banker formalizing this, and we had 5 companies coming in to do, you know, a full afternoon deep dive on the company. So Monday through Friday. And I had my whole team there, and we were prepped for it. And I remember on Friday, maybe Thursday afternoon or Friday, we get a call from the banker that says, hey, so-and-so, who didn't think that they could make it, wants to come out and meet on Saturday. And we're exhausted. I mean, completely exhausted. I have to ask my team to stay one more day. Thank God I did, because that's the term sheet that came in, right? That story was repeated several times. That's just one example of where you just don't know where the money's going to come from. And there was another one, actually, KKR, that led our last round. I remember random afternoon meeting. Hey, we're already going to this other person. Let's roundabout through KKR. I'm thinking, KKR, they're a big PE firm. They're not going to do a growth stage investment. Went in, mahogany walls. It looked like oil and gas. You know what I mean? It looked like old money. It didn't look like tech money. And I'm thinking, this is going to go nowhere. But I met him. Somewhere in the process, he goes, hey, we finally got our act together. We closed our fund. We really liked you. I like your space. We want to do the investment. So there's story after story after story that says, if you don't meet them and do the work, you just don't know what's going to happen, right? The second point is that every round of investment was different. And this is something none of your VCs are going to tell you. You would think, okay, I got 1 or 2 rounds done, my A or my seed and my A and my B. C should be a slam dunk. I'm telling you, every single round takes on a whole different set of motivations. And now you're straddling the investors who are not going to exactly tell you what they think is a win, what they think the valuation should be, because they're not going to compete against themselves. They're going to force you to go out and get an independent term sheet with companies independently valued by a new leader. So just remember that. As you succeed and you go through every round, everyone is different. Wipe the slate clean of what you know and assume this is a brand new round and there's going to be a whole new set of dynamics. And that was true all the way through. And we raised from seed through G in 110 million.
Terrific,
Yeah.
terrific. I'm going to dive now into, and I'm going to come back to the finance side in a minute, but I'd like to touch on the personal side. You know, I hate to know how many frequent flyer miles you have. I mean, you're constantly on the move. You're in frenetic activity all the time. And then you've got these 3 wonderful ladies at home that are super high energy and always engaged in frenetic activity as well. And one of the things I've observed about you is you have the ability to kind of carve out a space for you. And I think typically it's on a Saturday morning, riding your motorcycle or in your Jeep or whatever it may be. Tell us about that personal time and how you manage to balance between the energy at home and the energy at work.
When I was 40, I started boot camp, which is a 5:15 in the morning thing. So you're up at 4:30, you're out at 5:15. I'm back by about 6:30. Kids are just getting up. So for the better part of a decade, kind of what you describe as my personal time and where the wiggles get taken out, it wasn't conflicting with the company or with the family. You're right that on Saturday mornings, like, I got to get out. So I typically do get on my motorcycle for a couple hours. So it is difficult. The travel is difficult. I do travel just about every week, but it's not Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday. I'm typically out one night, maybe 2 nights. It's actually not that bad, honestly. I'm a morning person. I do start my morning really early. 4 o'clock is pretty normal. People will see me on email at 4, and then I'll go work out and then I come back. It does mean that when I get home, even though, like everyone, I'm totally addicted to the phone and to email. It just is. you could still be present at night. And that's what happens. And the weekends, we do a lot of things.
But one of the things I noticed, I think the last time you were over at our house, you were talking about the family workout and talking to the girls. Hey, let's go get a family workout. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that didn't work out too well.
Oh. Well, I really like the concept.
It's a good concept. I don't get a lot of receptivity to it. I don't say hike anymore.
Yeah. It sounds like work, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I'm going to jump over to Bob Smith and Vista.
Yes.
And the culture of Vista.
Yeah.
From my observations, which are fairly distant, they have a unique culture in how they're going about private equity investment and management of these companies. I mean, it really, and this is what PE should be, but I believe Bob is doing it, and that is getting the leverage of all the companies they've invested in, getting them to work together. I mean, it becomes a community. Touch on Bob's personal passion and that culture within Vista.
No doubt. I didn't know Vista before this. They did have a mystique to them. Now on the inside, I think I can appreciate why it exists. And it is a pretty quiet organization at the end of the day. So I would say this. As PE firms go, they only do enterprise software. Because of that, every CEO in the portfolio has a lot of shared interest and a lot of shared knowledge. It's very different if the PE firm is investing in everything. Because as you know, doing real estate is different than doing software, is different than doing, energy or health. So it starts there. The second thing that they do is they host semi-annually in-person events. And there's about 50 portfolio CEOs. So that number is manageable in terms of getting to know the other CEOs. So it starts with we're all in the same industry, and then we're all getting together at the same time. We also all happen to be experiencing the same, what I'll call Vista Formula, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of shared interest for us to be talking about what's working and what's not, what we've tweaked, if that makes sense. If you talk about Robert Smith, I've gotten a chance to meet him probably 4 or 5 times, and a couple of times up at his place in Boulder, actually with Cody over here. And he is a wonderful man. Like he's what I call a whole person. You do find people that are just, I'll say narrow, if that makes sense, or, myopically focused on numbers, and they kind of miss the meaning of life. That's not Robert. I think Robert grew up, pretty modest, frankly, here in Denver, went to East High School. So he's got a lot of family in Denver. He hasn't kind of forgotten where he's coming from. He really did it. He really bootstrapped himself up to where he is today. He's very philanthropic, which I really appreciate. So when I get around, you look at that. By the way, I would probably have a problem if that weren't the case. I'd just say knowing my personality, like if I don't believe and I don't see some real depth of character, I'm going to go someplace where I have that, period. And so, there was probably a year here early in the Vista where I said, I don't know Vista. Vista doesn't know me. But Vista's been so good to me in the company. I owe it to them to make sure the company transitions well into Vista. But I'll just, at the 1 year mark, I'll pause to say, is this right? And, that was about 8 months ago, 7, 8 months ago. And I said, this is awesome. This company's awesome. Love hanging around the people. And frankly, they're making us better. So.
Terrific.
Yep.
I think you're very fortunate
to
be in that group. I'm going to tell another personal story here. It's the bear story. You've already talked about the bear on your monitor. I'm going to tie that back in. But I remember our families were out camping, and this is in, United States Forest Service. It's not organized campgrounds. And we had a ranger pull up into where we were camping. It's just all dispersed stuff. And he said, I saw the biggest bear I've ever seen in Colorado. And this guy looked like he had some experience, and this bear just tore up a couple of campgrounds. And he said, so you need to have your coolers put away, all of those precautions. And he said, I'll be giving tickets if you don't. And so we all talked about that, and there became this little fog of paranoia about this big bear who's been tearing up camps. And I remember clearly that Andre, the innovator, got out a cord and put it around his tent, like with some tin cans or something hanging from it that was, designed to be a bear repellent. And of course, no bear showed up. But the next morning, we cooked breakfast. And what odor does a bear enjoy more than bacon and eggs, right? So we make bacon and eggs, and I look up the hill, and here's this bear. And it's the biggest one I've seen in Colorado. And he's coming down the hill, and so we're all, get in the cars, everybody get in the cars. And so we have this panic. I had to go get my son and wake him up and bring him back down the hill. But the moral of the story is, you're always going to run into bears, and how you handle them is the key. So you've used the bear on your monitor to remind you to not be risk adverse, take new challenges, engage in new things that are kind of scary.
Yeah.
Give us more on that.
So I wish I knew who said this. It was a famous VC said, I've never met a really successful company that hasn't had multiple near-death experiences. And I thought about that in my own background. I said, lo and behold, that's really true. Like, how do you know a mindset you have to put yourself in to win? He said, you basically have to come as close to suicide. He goes, the person who mentally gets as close to suicide as possible is the one that wins. And so when you think about that, where in our lives do we put ourselves in situations where we could die, right? Or that the company could die, so to speak. And the truth is, we don't, right? We spend all this time trying to make sure we don't get close to those circumstances. And so we're busy building buffers and fallback plans and succession plans and all these things to keep us from experiencing near-death experiences. And so the concept of unleash the bear and then outrun it, that's the visual. The visual is, have you done something, have you unleashed the grizzly bear such that if you don't get moving and put on your best game, that grizzly bear could catch you. That's the visual metaphor. So when the bear, and you should see the picture of the bear, I found one on Google Images. This bear is coming at you. And this thing's got you in its sights, and it's gonna run you down if you don't outrun it. What's interesting about that, it's one thing as a manager or a leader to unleash bears on your people. Like, we do that all the time. I want to set a big goal for you, and you better make it. And it's another thing to unleash a bear on yourself. It's just a different level of awareness when you say, I'm making a decision right now that could do me in if I'm not really, really good. But life is short. Like, if you're not unleashing the bear on yourself and seeing what you're made of, and I would venture to say, you don't know what you're made of until that bear is within eyesight. And then you're gonna figure out what you're capable of. So that's the metaphor. I can tell you this, so since releasing the concept of the bear, I sent out an image. Again, I use Google Images for a lot. So I've got a teddy bear, I've got a koala bear, I've got a panda bear, I've got a baby grizzly, and then I've got the grizzly. And the truth is, people aren't all that comfortable in just releasing the grizzly overnight, right? Everyone's got different risk tolerance. And so, I'm handing out the teddy bear awards and the koala awards, and every now and then we get up to a panda. The truth is, it takes a while to build an organization that is willing to really take risks, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So there it is.
I love the bear. I love the bear. Let's talk about innovation.
How are we doing on time, by the way?
Are we doing
we
questions?
got a clock.
Peter, are we doing questions, or we just run to the top of the hour?
Okay.
10 minutes, cool. That'll work out nicely. Innovation. Over the years, I've seen you come up with multiple ideas for businesses, right?
Yeah.
I remember a snowboarding clothing line that you developed. I particularly remember chocolate on demand. The concept was you can, get on an app and anytime you want, get chocolate delivered to your house. And frankly, I thought he was a little whacked out on that one. I wasn't quite buying it. But look at now, Uber's delivering food. All these food delivery services are out there. So that idea has become mainstream.
Yeah.
So my point is that you have a huge capability for innovation, and you have a magical knack to look into the future and around corners of where things are going to go. You demonstrated that with Ping Identity. Hey, back when you started this thing, what was identity management? It was not top of the, it was SSO maybe?
It wasn't a term.
It wasn't a term.
Yeah.
So you developed an industry by being innovative and looking into the future and around corners. Tell us more about that knack. And I'm going to follow up with what's next after you talk about that.
So a lot of these ideas, they're actually, I'm making a parallel I've actually never made before. Observing some of the little quirks in your company and turning them into something, that skill set is not dissimilar to what you're describing as a skill set to peek around corners. So I've got a simple philosophy that all truth lies in the market. No matter how smart you are, you're not smarter than the market. So the question really is, are you paying attention to the little signals, vibrations in the market today that become tsunamis tomorrow? The vibrations are actually there. Question is, are you paying attention? So many times what people describe as vision, to a visionary, or at least to myself, I would characterize as, I've got really good pattern recognition skills, is the way I would describe it. And what I mean by that is that I can see one or two things that happen, I can connect the dots, and then it's not a big leap for me to draw a straight line into the future. Pay attention to the small vibrations, the small things. If you see them twice, extrapolate. Extrapolate out in the future. Where does that, if I pull on that string, where does that lead? And I don't think it's that difficult. I actually do think it can be learned. I think in my particular case, it was innate, right? But I don't think it's a mystery. If you listen to customers and you are looking for patterns and you are able to then extrapolate a few common threads that two independent customers say something kind of close, you recognize that they're kind of close, that's the pattern recognition, and then you can extrapolate. You can do what you're describing as seeing around the corner. What other people say is seeing around the corners, to me, is just an extrapolation. And so yeah, everything I've ever done that people would call visionary or seeing into the future backs up to that simple kind of formula, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. So you just had your 50th birthday. I'm 65 now, by the way, just signed up for Medicare. Isn't that crazy?
Congratulations.
Thank you. What is your personal BHAG? What's your biggest aspiration?
Yeah.
What do you want to do with the next 50 years?
Yeah. So if you talk about experiencing an extraordinary team, even for just a moment in time, and an extraordinary team that does an extraordinary thing. What's an extraordinary thing? I heard another great quote. We don't get paid to deliver the inevitable. I love that. People that show up to work and just say, like, if I just do enough time, I'll deliver the inevitable. Where's the fun in that? Like, so you talk about extraordinary achievements. In our world, an extraordinary achievement is when something happens, a group of people deliver something that was ahead of its time. Clearly, Apple did it with the iPhone. Musk is doing it today. Musk has a formula for doing this that I need to figure out, right? There is something in the way that he is either attracting talent to achieve the things that he's achieving in the time frame that he's achieving them. I think experiencing that would be incredible. And I'm not there yet. I haven't done it yet. I do believe there's a formula to it. I just haven't discovered it yet. And so Discovering that formula and then experiencing an extraordinary act with a group of people would be awesome. Yep.
Gets me going. Okay. If you had to boil it all down into one phrase, and your audience is the budding entrepreneur or the mid-mature company CEO that's wrestling with those pivot points and those transformations of different kinds of, equity investment and so forth. If you had to boil it down into one key phrase, one thing that you would recommend for a startup or mature company CEO, what is the most important thing for them? It's a very difficult question. And by the way, none of this has been rehearsed. He didn't have any idea what questions I was going to ask him, except for this one. I said, I'm going to give you this one because it's a hard one. Think about it a little bit. What is your thought on that?
My immediate reaction when you said that was, I've observed life filters out the uncommitted, and that success often exists just beyond the really tough part. So perseverance would have been my answer. But the truth is, if I look back and I say, what was the one thing that ended me up where I currently am, I would say it's the people I met and the things I did with those people. So it was the people. To include, had you not acquired my first company and called me and moved me to Denver, that was a pivot point in my life, sliding doors like, that ended me up where I am today. And the thing that gave me this realization, because I would never have, everyone says team, and I get it at a surface level and I experience it. But the proof is when, about a year ago, I was on vacation wondering what the hell anyone uses those mind maps for. I must be missing something, because mind maps, I use a spreadsheet, I use a word processor, I use pretty much everything else, but I've never found a reason to use a mind map. So I'm sitting there at the mind map and it's got the bubble in the middle. I said, what am I going to do on this map? And I asked the question, I said, I wonder how I got here. How did I get here? That was the question. I said, I'm going to mind map how I got here. So I started mapping backwards from where I was. Anything that came top to mind that I would said was a big pivot. Like it was truly, if I was jumping on stones, these are the stones that led me to where I am today. And it only took 20, 30 minutes to build out the map. And when I looked at it, something really jumped out at me. I would have thought that it would have been either my location or maybe even more so my ideas, things like that would have showed up on this map, and it wasn't. Nearly every single bubble had a name. And that was my aha moment, that my life has taken the course that it's taken because of the people I've met and subsequently the things that I did with them. And so the team, if you want to boil that down to the team, there's the logic behind the statement that says you are an average of the people you surround yourself with. And so I think my life's bearing out to be that way. Then the next question that follows from that obviously is, well then, how purposeful are you around who you surround yourself with? Because one thing to just Forrest Gump be bouncing through life, and it's another thing to say, I'm going to manifest what people call luck. You want to manifest luck? Surround yourself with incredible people, and I guarantee you your luck is going to improve. Okay. That wasn't a phrase, that was a story.
No,
thank you.
That nailed it. And Peter, gosh, I hope somebody recorded this. The value of what he just talked through for the last hour or whatever is going to be meaningful to so many people. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
So glad to be part of your life.
Likewise. Thank you, Steve. Cheers. We've got 2 questions, I think.
Huh?
Can we do questions?
Are we doing questions, Peter? I wasn't clear on that. Great.
Yeah.
Good morning, and thank you for your inspiration. It's a great story. So you talked about batch in terms of how you evaluate new people you're meeting,
Yep.
coming onto the team. And then you talked about your bearable, unbearable moments in terms of how fearlessly these people wind up executing.
Yes.
How does that fearlessness and bearability tie back to your initial evaluation? Because I didn't find that in the BATCH.
Well, so I alluded to the Vista Formula of hiring people early in their career. We do a cognitive assessment before people even get interviews. Right out of the gate, 70% of the people are not eligible, if you will. So you're dealing with 30% in the first 15 minutes before they even get an interview. That's a big part of Bright. Right? That's a scientific way to kind of proxy on the concept of Bright. I've also observed that being brave and being young and naive are one and the same. And look, I look at my own history that way. Like, it's when you don't know how much it can hurt, you just jump. And so there really is something to taking big risks, having nothing to lose, and being frankly, what's the right word? You know, kind of braver than you deserve to be, let's just say, which is kind of a youthful comment. And so I do think that I do see people that are, say, more experienced. They've been down a lot of roads that, you know, have dead-ended or have in some way burned them or didn't work out. They become cautious. Keeping the organization young and brave, that makes sense? Like, you have to force that. I find that doesn't happen naturally. Our company started young, but then became mature. If you're not keeping the balance of youthful enthusiasm and, shall I say, naive bravery in the organization, you can become a cautious organization. So that's one of the ways in which I'm forcing it. We're forcing a lot of people early in their career who are bright into the organization. And I think that's making the organization braver and willing to take on more risks. And you know what? I often look at that. I'm like, hey, if no one wants to take it, give it to the young guy. He doesn't know any better. He doesn't know that he can't do it. That's an awesome person to give it to. And lo and behold, sometimes they just find a way through, didn't know any better. As everyone does, like, God, everything's a mine out there. I'm going to step on the mine. They go, I don't see any mines. So.
Hi, Russell Castagnero with OnePay. I really like your bears, the bears that you have, and what I of course went right to because I'm in a startup, is the polar bear of finance. You know, where you hear a lot of successful entrepreneurs that say, oh well, the biggest blessing we had was that we didn't have enough money. I mean, that's looking back. Most people, that's the reason why they closed down. But how does that like that? I mean, am I right in identifying that's the biggest bear you can have is running out of runway, or is that should you be as an entrepreneur should be saying, I kind of need to not have too much money so I don't get my company too old or whatever.
So you're absolutely right. I like to say there's 1,000,001 ways to screw a business, and many of them are early. Pretty much anything can kill you when you're young. You're not very resilient. You're not profitable. You don't have cash. You need future cash. There is something kind of embedded in the bear in early businesses that require cash. I mean, so if you're running your business on the assumption you're going to raise future cash, you got a grizzly bear that's going to possibly catch you at some moment in time. And how many people have stories where everything was great until the market turned and then financing disappeared on the fly and the whole company took another turn? I do think that there's something to scarcity. And they do say scarcity and innovation are coupled, and I absolutely see that. It is very easy and very lazy to throw money at a problem. And so I see a lot of very poor business habits get created when money comes too easy. When companies raise too much money in a single round and it came too easy at too high a valuation. Inside of that equation will be an incredibly inefficient business at the end of the day. So I think for me, it's like finding the balance. In the beginning, you're going to have to raise money. Depending on the space you're in, you're going to have to raise money. Your job as the CEO is to bring resources to bear. Resources are people, team, and money. And if you can't do that sufficient to the goal that you've set in front of the company, then you are probably not up to the job that you have, because that is your job, to bring resources to bear. Keeping the company a little tight always, I think, is healthy. You will eventually get to a point, if you're successful, where the company doesn't require money, and there'll be other bears that you have to unleash, not the money bear that will, have you unfunded and laying people off if you don't raise the money. Anyway, I don't know that I answered your question, but at least kind of that's my experience. Keep everything in balance is my point. Know that early decisions that you make early have more impact. Let's just say poor decisions early have more impact, detrimental, than poor decisions later. The seemingly small decisions you make early actually can kill you right out of the gate. Things like, hey, me and my friend want to do a business. What do you think? Let's split it 50-50. Right? Makes sense. I don't know. 50-50 sounds fair right out of the gate. That's not the right construct if you're succeeding. So that's just one example of literally how the first little decision you make could become a company killer down the road. Okay, one more question. Thanks.
I got the last question. Right here, Andre.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Great fireside chat. My question might be a little bit more out of left field, but you obviously have a very successful business. How have you had and how have you found the same success with your marriage and your kids, and how big a role has that played in the success in your business?
Yeah. Well, so it's a journey. It goes through phases. This wasn't my first business. And so while I was fully committed, I also wasn't 25, right? And what I mean by that is that I think I had a sense of balance at Ping. I started it at 32 that I might not have had I been married with kids in my 20s. I think I probably would have been very out of balance in my 20s. But in my 30s, I just simply had more balance. I also had a little bit more wherewithal, frankly, and the wherewithal enabled a little bit more balance. So I was able to have my wife stay home and be with the kids. So I'd say circumstantially, we didn't have as much stress as maybe some might when starting a company. I think the family can come under a lot of stress. And I don't think, short of my being obviously very engaged in building the company, I wasn't absent. Let's just say that. I would say that was the biggest thing. I had the awareness not to be absent. And I had the awareness to be present with the family when I needed to be so that they were being fed. By the way, and I'll just add one more thing to that. When I started Ping, I raised $500,000. And people said, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I'm going to pay myself and my one other guy. And they said, that's it? You're not going to go hire a bunch of other people, not pay yourself? Which my earlier entrepreneurial self would have said, damn, you're right. I probably should do that. My more mature self said, you're completely wrong. If I can't afford to pay myself, I can't afford to pay another person. And that was a realization that I had to maintain stability and balance in my life. And that if I couldn't raise enough money to start with stability with myself, how could I possibly provide it to anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Thanks again.